retains their credit and they finagle it that way, and they go out to look for a new property, they have to rent because even though their property wasn't worth what they owed on it, they can't buy it for less. And all of these things add up to a point where we get to a very dangerous place in society where you can't have every arrow in the quiver be tipped with gold, just to make it as realistic as I can for you. We have to put a very multi-pronged attack in place. And the way that we do that is we need to sit down and we need to evaluate our individual situations, and we need to say to ourselves, what are the things that I know I'm going to need? What are the things that I know I am going to require in my life? And then we need to build a lifestyle that ensures that those things stay around. So what do we need every day? We need food, we need shelter, we need energy, we need fresh water. We need some level of income. We need some level of money, because no matter what happens in society, from a small to a complete and total breakdown, at some point there's a rebuilding and a need for a means of exchange. We need skills, we need relationships, we need community. And we should also understand that if we talk about the extreme breakdown of society, that gold and silver end up being kind of a second tier of rebuilding when they're actually useful. In the first level of a breakdown of society, all that gold and silver that we have put away, and I'm talking about a total breakdown here, folks, not the most probable thing. And for those that think since I'm a survivalist, I'm an extremist, I'm going to tell you the odds of this, the total complete collapse, right, where it's hard to get anything no matter how much money you have, are long. But if they do, the consequences are severe. In that situation, a bag of rice will be worth more than a half ounce of gold for a period of time, because we can't eat gold. As society rebuilds and as a means of exchange is now necessary again, where direct barter begins to go to the wayside, because just because I have rice and you have beef jerky doesn't mean that we both need the same thing. So we need a means of exchange. That's where gold and silver has always come in, as a store of value. So I want you to think about that as I answer some of your questions tonight. I'm going to open it up to questions pretty quick here, because I want to give you guys as much time to ask me as many things as you want. And I want to tell you, when it comes to asking me questions, if it's not something I've spoken about already, it's fine. You can ask me anything. We can go into the Federal Reserve System. We can go into current economic decisions and policies. I'm sorry about that. That's the banner going off on my thing. If anybody knows how to mute that, let me know. But it's a banner at the bottom of this thing you just heard there. These little smileys are yelling. But we can go into anything. And with that, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to open things up and see if anybody has any questions, anything you want me to talk about, anything you want me to go into, and just shoot from the hip. And really, I want to leave as much time as I can. This is why I've kind of blown through this pretty quick. And leave as much time as I can for this, because generally what happens is you get a couple questions initially, and you answer them, and they spur more and more questions. I can see we got a very full room, so I'm going to go ahead and open things up now. Let me know, what do you guys want to hear about? What do you want to know about? What do you want me to talk about tonight?
Go ahead, X Factor.
Yeah, there's a couple people here with text questions. My question was, what type of food do you like to store away for emergency situations, and how much of it do you like to have?
Okay, well, let's start out with the voice question there, and we'll go ahead and take some of these text questions as well. On food storage, my philosophy has always been to begin with a very simple philosophy that's way older than me, which is eat what you store and store what you eat. So your first steps in food storage, look at all the things that you use on a daily basis and say to yourself, hey, which of these things do I actually eat and consume are actually storable? And then begin to build a reserve of those storage. And that should be able to take you to a 30-day supply of reserve food easily. And that probably means that you're sitting on 60 to 90 days worth of use of that food, because you're not living on it for emergencies, so you're not eating it 100% of the time, if that makes sense. So, for instance, we may have macaroni stored up that would last us for 3 months in daily use, but in emergency, it may get shrunk down to a 30-day period. And once you have that kind of 30-day buffer in place, it takes a lot of the pressure off. And now is the time to continue to expand that level of food storage. And it's also the time to start looking at some commercially prepared storables. These will be anything from MREs to things like Mountain House, Providing Pantry, Yoder's. These are all great companies that provide this food. If you told me that you wanted to live with a 60-day supply of food in reserve, I would tell you you're in pretty good shape for, most of what could go wrong. You're probably going to be okay. Personally, for me, I'm well over 6 months now. I'm looking to move to a full year of reserve. I know that seems like a lot for a lot of people, but it is actually very doable. Once you do this, what you need to understand about food storage is if you do a lot of the storing of what you eat, you do a lot of growing your own food, learning preservation methods like canning and dehydration and flash freezing, and you take all of these things and you bring them together, what happens is the cost of your food actually goes down for a variety of reasons. Anything you're producing for yourself, you'll be able to obviously produce for far less than you pay for it. We also have inflation to look at. So as we're bringing food into the house that we're purchasing today and we're using it 6 months from now, we are deferring the capital expenditure, which is exactly the way Southwest Airlines buys gasoline. Another thing that we're able to do is if I have 6 months worth of a particular product and I go to the store and it's not on sale or it's gone up in price, I can abstain from buying it for 2-3 months until it comes down in price or goes on sale or I get an opportunity to buy. When I add up all these things, food storage is probably one of the best investments you can make in your money. In fact, I would tell you this, in spite of how much gold has gone up in price this year, you could have done better with certain items that you eat. Now, you can't buy as much of those items because they do have a shelf life and they don't store at the same economic density that gold and silver do. But it is something to think about. So hopefully that answers that question. Let me grab one of these. Okay. I'm going to do this question here. Mr. Canada says, diesel generator, good idea. Definitely a good idea. Generators, you always have to look at them, though, as a short-term energy solution. No matter how much fuel you store for them, you're looking at, maybe a month of electricity out of a generator, unless it's used very spotty. With energy investments, you're probably better off using whatever alternative energy is best for your area, be that solar or wind, because they're sustainable. I'm very big on, though, making sure everybody has a generator. In fact, I tell you, you want to probably have two. Definitely learn to build a simple battery backup system. That allows you to use even a small wattage generator to charge up your battery backup system during the day. Use your generator on certain things where you have the generator outside the house running cords into your home, and you can have that battery backup system. It's like two sources of power. Next person says, in 1980, with the run up in gold and silver, what caused the drop back down? I'll tell you, first of all, a big part of the run-up was the Hunt brothers attempting to corner the silver market in 1982, and that had an effect on all metals. We also had something very unique going on there. We had the beginnings of what looked like a major hyperinflation run that never came, kind of fizzled out. We had the final decoupling of the gold standard in 1975 under Nixon. People think generally that 1971 is the date that we decoupled, but 75 was when people were actually able to go out and buy this stuff in America again in any kind of quantity without special permission or of a license. So we had this big glut run on gold, and everybody bought and bought and bought and bought. And then what happens whenever we have a big run-up on anything? The guy that buys early all of a sudden is looking at a huge profit. He's beat inflation. What does he do? Does he sit around on that metal forever, or does he say, now is time to take my profits if the end of the world is not coming? So a lot of profit taking drove the price back down to a more reasonable point. And if you look at the spike through like 1978 through 82 and back down, but then you just take the run up in gold, and then you go to where that it came back down, you have a very steady, very slow increase that's very on line with inflation, with that in there as an arbitrary bump. I'm a little bit scared of the price of gold right now. I'm not saying not to buy any. I'm still buying some here and there. But remember one thing about any commodity, whether it's gold, whether it's silver, whether it's a stock, whether it's a bond, whenever there's a bust, for there to be a bust, what must precede the bust? Anybody in the chat room want to give me a one-word answer to that? What must precede any bust? A bull boom, there it is. Silver Trader tells me a boom. So when you see anything booming, use a little bit of caution with it. I'm not saying don't buy, but I'm saying pay attention. And you start to see weakness in that market, generally you have a lot of time to do some profit taking. If you're going to put money in gold right now, and that's money that I'm putting away for 10 or 15 years, buy as much as you want. I could care less. You're going to be fine. If you want to spend that money in the next 2 or 3 years, don't put all those eggs into that basket. You're going to have some issues there. Let's see another one. Will there be a chance that demand for gold will outstrip supply? Not sure, because of so many things that are. One of the things that we need to understand about the demand that we see for gold is a lot of it is in materialistic demand and things like jewelry. A lot of what drove demand in 2007, 2008 for gold, when times were pretty good, we were still on the last clips of the last boom, was how many people in India finally had middle-class jobs and saw gold as a status symbol. Is it possible? Certainly it's possible. But remember one thing that's a constant about any commodity, as long as the price has gone up, what happens to the companies that are in business of extracting it? They ramp up their extraction. So there's a lot of gold out there left to be extracted. And if you get enough of a run-up, anything short of that final hyperinflation pop, you're going to get a point where people are going to want to take those profits. Even if you get a final, I mean, if you think about it, what we're really protecting ourselves from with gold and silver on the long term is standard inflation, which is just a good hedge, or the complete runaway blow-up inflation. Now, if the Canadian currency, any of the North American currencies, okay, I'm getting a message here. We'll do that in just a second there, X Factor. Okay. We'll do that. Anyway, so once we get that run-up and the currency basically dies a death, what is a nation going to do? Is it going to just quit making money, or is it going to come up with a new form of currency? Whether it's commodity-backed or not, it's the currency. And the people that are smart, that hold some form of their wealth in gold and silver, are then able to go into that new form of currency. The other thing about gold and silver is it's portable. So if I have to leave this country and go somewhere else, right, then I can take a very small amount of gold with me, and I actually have a very large amount of wealth that's immediately transferable into any other currency. So hopefully that answers that. I'm going to unlock the mic right now,